You know the story. A brilliant man sits under an apple tree, an apple falls on his head, and boom, gravity is discovered. It is a neat, tidy tale of rational genius. But what if I told you that this exact same man, the father of modern science, spent more than half his life secretly operating a dark, smoke-filled laboratory, hunting for the mythical philosopher's stone? What if the man who mapped the orbits of the planets and decoded the nature of light was actually a heretic, an occultist and an alchemist who believed he could communicate with angels and pinpoint the exact date of the apocalypse? Forget the apple. The real story of Sir Isaac Newton is far darker, much stranger, and infinitely more fascinating. He was not the first of the Age of Reason. As the economist John Maynard Keynes once said, he was the last of the magicians. To understand the mind of this incredibly complex genius, we have to go back to Christmas Day, 1642. Isaac Newton was born prematurely in a small manor house in Lincolnshire, England. He was so tiny that his mother said he could fit inside a quart mug. His father had died 3 months before he was born, and when Isaac was just 3 years old, his mother remarried and abandoned him, leaving him to be raised by his grandparents. This deep wound of abandonment shaped everything that followed. Newton grew up isolated, deeply paranoid, and fiercely protective of his own mind. He did not play with other children. Instead, he built intricate mechanical toys, sundials, and water clocks. He preferred the silent, predictable world of objects over the unpredictable nature of human beings. In 1661, he entered Cambridge University. He was not exactly a standout student at first, largely because he was ignoring the standard curriculum. While his tutors were teaching the ancient philosophy of Aristotle, Newton was secretly devouring the cutting-edge ideas of Descartes, Galileo, and Kepler. But then, in 1665, disaster struck. The Great Plague swept through England, forcing Cambridge to close its doors. Newton was forced to return to his childhood home in the countryside. For the next 2 years, in almost total isolation, Newton experienced what historians call his Year of Wonders. Uninterrupted and completely alone with his thoughts, a young man in his early 20s revolutionized mathematics by inventing calculus. He revolutionized optics by proving that white light is composed of a spectrum of colors using a prism. And, of course, he began to formulate the laws of universal gravitation. It was an explosion of intellectual achievement that remains unparalleled in human history. When he eventually published his masterwork, the Principia Mathematica, in 1687, it changed the world forever. It provided a single, elegant mathematical framework that explained both the falling of an apple and the orbit of the moon. He was hailed as a rational god, the ultimate champion of logic and reason. But behind the closed doors of his Cambridge chambers, Newton was living a double life. While the world applauded his mathematical genius, Newton was secretly obsessed with an ancient, forbidden art: alchemy. Today, we dismiss alchemy as a pseudoscience, a foolish quest to turn lead into gold. But for Newton, alchemy was the ultimate key to unlocking the deepest secrets of the universe. He believed that the ancient philosophers had known profound truths about nature and God, truths that had been lost to time and hidden in cryptic mythological texts. Newton built a secret furnace in his garden and spent thousands of hours bent over boiling crucibles of toxic metals. He rarely slept, sometimes staying awake for days on end, completely absorbed in his glowing concoctions. He wrote over 1 million words on alchemy, but he never published a single one of them. He hid his alchemical manuscripts under lock and key, using bizarre pseudonyms like Jehovah Sanctus Unus to conceal his identity. Why the secrecy? Because in 17th century England, practicing alchemy was a crime punishable by hanging. The government was terrified that someone might actually figure out how to manufacture gold, instantly devaluing the currency and crashing the empire's economy. Newton was hunting for the philosopher's stone, a legendary substance that could not only transmute base metals into noble gold, but also grant immortality and profound spiritual enlightenment. He believed that the universe was alive, animated by secret, invisible spiritual forces. Ironically, it was this very belief in invisible, occult forces that allowed him to conceptualize gravity. Other scientists of his time rejected gravity because they could not understand how two objects could pull on each other across millions of miles of empty space without physically touching. It sounded like magic, but to Newton, the alchemist, invisible forces operating across the void made perfect sense. His obsession with the crucible came at a terrifying physical cost. Decades after his death, scientists analyzed a lock of Newton's hair and found astronomical levels of mercury, lead, and arsenic. For years, he had been breathing in the toxic fumes of his experiments. This severe heavy metal poisoning likely triggered the massive nervous breakdown he suffered in 1693, a period where he suffered from terrifying insomnia, profound paranoia, and wrote unhinged, accusatory letters to his few remaining friends. But alchemy was not his only secret. Newton was also a deeply religious man, but his religion was fiercely unorthodox. He was a devout Christian who spent more time studying the Bible than he ever did studying science. Yet he secretly rejected the doctrine of the Holy Trinity, believing it to be a massive historical fraud injected into the Church by corrupted councils. If his anti-Trinitarian views had been discovered, he would have been stripped of his position at Cambridge, completely disgraced and entirely ruined. So he kept his heresy entirely to himself, writing millions of words on theology in absolute secrecy. For Newton, the Bible was not just a book of moral guidance, it was a cryptic puzzle, a divine riddle waiting to be solved by a mind brilliant enough to decode it. He taught himself Hebrew so he could read the original texts. He became obsessed with the architectural blueprints of King Solomon's temple, believing that its dimensions encoded the very mathematical structure of the universe. He applied the same rigorous analytical mind that decoded the laws of motion to the chaotic prophecies of the Book of Revelation and the Book of Daniel. He calculated the exact dates of past historical events and confidently predicted the end of the world. Based on his exhaustive biblical mathematics, Newton concluded that the apocalypse and the return of Christ would not happen before the year 2060. Think about that for a moment. The man who laid the foundation for modern physics literally calculated a mathematical expiration date for human history. Newton was a man of terrifying contradictions. He was vindictive and petty, famously engaging in bitter lifelong feuds with other scientists like Robert Hooke and Gottfried Leibniz, actively trying to destroy their reputations to secure his own legacy. Yet he could also be profoundly humble when contemplating the vastness of the unknown. He once famously remarked near the end of his life that he felt like only a boy playing on the seashore, finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, while the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before him. When Isaac Newton died in 1727, he was buried with full honors in Westminster Abbey, celebrated purely as the champion of the scientific revolution. His family and early biographers were horrified when they opened his personal chest and discovered mountains of papers detailing his heretical theology and obsessive alchemy. They quietly swept it all under the rug, marking the boxes with the words, "not fit to be printed." It took hundreds of years for the full truth to finally emerge, largely thanks to individuals who purchased these forgotten manuscripts at auction in the 1930s. Today, we have to adjust our understanding of who Isaac Newton really was. He did not see a separation between science, magic, and religion. For him, a mathematical equation, a biblical prophecy, and a chemical reaction in a crucible were all just different languages used by God to write the secrets of reality. He sought the truth with a ferocious, unparalleled intensity, regardless of where that search led him. So, the next time you look up at the moon or witness the colors of a rainbow or hear the story of the falling apple, remember the real Isaac Newton. Remember the lonely, brilliant, mercury-poisoned mystic toiling away in the dark, trying to decode the very mind of God. The greatest scientist in human history was, in his own heart, the world's greatest alchemist.